Welcome back, everybody. We are kicking off December with the lovely Galadriel Steinman. You've seen her on This Is Us. You've seen her on The Middle. You've seen her in Glee. If you can remember, I definitely remember seeing her in Glee. That's not true. I remember that she was in Glee, and then I had to look it up just, about a half an hour before the show. So only truth on the show. Truth is the key. But please welcome Galadriel, and I'm really happy that you're here.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. See, I was thinking about getting away with it, and then I checked myself. Nope, I'm not going to.
This is the year of the truth.
This is the year of the truth. Yes, absolutely. And that's kind of the funny part. My parents, my wife, everybody kind of is on my case because I'm all truth always. When I'm interviewing for a job, they ask me a question, I answer it truthfully. Whether it's the right thing to say on an interview or it's not, I'm going to tell them who I am because I'm a firm believer of if you're going to hire me for a job, you need to know who I am. I'm not going to pretend. It's like a relationship. When you're on a date with somebody or when you're trying to get to know somebody, it's either you're putting on a face or you're really opening up. And the way to a real relationship is to open up and have people know who you are, so you can know who they are and then decide if this is a match. I view everything kind of in that mode. So yeah.
You have to remember most of my job interviews are auditions, so I'm lying from the beginning, but telling the truth, just someone else's truth.
Yeah, well, it's you in that character and their truth in that moment. Yes, absolutely. Which is actually quite a difficult thing to do, especially in an audition. So let's actually start it off there, and then we'll come back to kind of your background in a minute. But in an audition, what have you found as to kind of the most difficult thing that you encounter and the easiest thing for you personally?
I think early on for me, the most difficult thing in auditions was just assuming that by me just going in and being present and open and truthful, that I'd be able to deliver a performance that they'd be interested in buying. And, unfortunately, you're usually reading with an assistant who has no acting experience or interest. You have no props, no wardrobe. You're supposed to be standing on top of the Eiffel Tower. You have a chair. And so very quickly, I had to figure out how to combine acting technique and, natural instincts and talent. And so now I think auditions are fun for me, but most of that is because I create everything that will be there for me before I go into the audition so that when I get there, I can still do that same thing that I did early on and just show up and do it for the first time because all that work was done before I got there. And I could read with a stick if they want me to, and it's still going to be endowed with the same life and history that hopefully the actor will be on set.
Yeah. Do you walk in as the character, or do you walk in as Galadriel and then snap into the character?
I definitely walk in as myself, and that choice has come from the many casting director friends that I have that are like, please do not walk in character, especially if it's a series regular. We want to have an idea of who we're going to be working with for the next 10 years. Now, I will say a rookie move I used to do when I first came that I don't do anymore is I thought, well, let's say this character is like strung out and like hippy dippy and all this stuff. If I come in totally different,
Yeah.
and then I do the performance, they'll be so impressed by how good of an actor I am because they'll see like, wow, she's like that, but look what she can do. And that doesn't work because especially producers, they like to hire someone, at least they don't want to hire an evil person to play evil, but they're looking for that essence and they don't know what we know. And so now I do try to at least hint at the essence of the character I'll be bringing in, which also helps prepare me to like launch into it. But I like to think of it more as turning up and down different dials of my own colors rather than conjuring something that isn't truly a part of me. So it's always me. It's just going to be whether it's me perky and bright or me a little more subdued and connected, depends on the role, I think.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into kind of the different acting approaches. And as actors start out, and you're an acting coach, so as actors starting out, they learn all the different methodologies, and they go through the spectrum. And I see it as this kind of circle of acting life. You start out being yourself, and then you're told to be somebody else and all these different approaches, and then until the very some point in time you really you realize that it's really all just me, and it's the different parts of me. So it seems like you're on that spectrum of it's you, it's just different parts of you and the different, turning up the dial or down.
Yeah, and I think that that was a big thing for me early on, especially when I moved to Los Angeles. There's so many acting studios and so many places, and how do you know which one is the right one? And everyone says, "Ah, we got trained." Like I swear, 10 acting studios are the reason Halle Berry was successful. If you believe they're like ads, you're like, how do I know? And
Yeah.
so I sort of have found the buffet approach in my own work, and I encourage most actors to do that. Study everywhere,
Yeah.
learn it all, carry your tool belt, and have access to whatever you need when it's
Mm.
there. So sometimes, there's those acting studios that'll say only substitution. You can only use your own life experiences, or it's not real. Only imagination. It's cheating if you bring anything from your own life. And like that's just why, it
Yeah.
makes no sense. Sometimes your imagination is going to be needed when you can't connect, or because you just immerse yourself in the story so quickly. Sometimes you relate so much. And so I think it's best to learn it all. And then you can like open your closet and pick out which things are going to be there for you that day. And when one stops working, you've got backups.
Yeah. So what have you found from your tool belt that works best for you? I know it varies depending on role, but if you look from a macro perspective and kind of throughout your career saying, this worked more than the other ones, what would that be?
Um, well, I would say it's just become a personal change. Early in my career, I substitution was most successful for me, and I would spend hours trying to find a connection into something, or imagining it's as if this happened. Some people call it 50-50 or as if. And it's funny, somewhere along the line, it just became easier for me to just jump into imagination. And so now, I was an only child. Oh, I am an only child.
Yeah.
Um, and I've been a reader my whole life, and so I never had trouble jumping into the viewpoint of my fiction characters, just accepting that I was in their head and going.
Mm.
And so I think at some point, once technique became more of like a part of me and I wasn't consciously writing down each thing, it became a part of that, then imagination became more natural to me. It was actually easier for me to accept these imaginary circumstances. But sometimes, maybe the stakes don't feel as high to me as they do to this character, especially if it's like on Mars, underwater in the year 2075. Like that's kind of hard to connect to. So
Yeah.
in those situations, I'll usually kind of try to think of, I'm more using my imagination to
Mm.
identify how they're feeling and at what level, and then
Mhm.
creating something that does that same for me, because maybe no matter what I do, I could not bring myself to that place based on those circumstances because I can't imagine them,
Yeah.
So then I'm trying to take it macro to
Mhm.
micro to something more relatable. Like maybe they're trying to save Mars, but then I'm like, okay, well, maybe their family that saves their family. Okay, I can imagine trying to save
Yeah.
family. So
Yeah.
then also the audience can relate too, I feel like.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? All of the sci-fi, it's set somewhere else, but that's really just a way for us to relax and to stop thinking that this is reality, where in reality they're just focusing on the same concepts. It's the same concepts that all of us can actually attach to. Same thing with animated. It's really all the same ideas. We're just taking them into a different medium, and I think that allows people to relax and to suspend disbelief and to kind of relate much more to the characters there in whatever it is that they're watching.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument that there's only 10 stories or whatever that you can ever tell, and it's just telling them in different ways. I always think of it as it's almost like Mad Libs. You're just filling in different things in different blanks, but we're telling the same stories they were telling thousands of years ago, the same epic journeys and coming of age stories and stuff. So I think always starting by trying to connect to what the universal human truth is usually
Mhm.
the simplest way to go forward.
Agreed. I'm watching. I just I like Jane Austen's novels. I didn't grow up with them, but I did a movie. I did a version of Pride and Prejudice And then in my background, I thought, well, like at least I need to know what the story is about so I can be that little, co-star part in it. And then that took me into the whole Jane Austen, run where I've watched every movie and every show and everything that I can get my hands on because I loved it. So now I watched the new Emma with Anya Taylor-Joy, and then I thought, you know what? I did not see the Emma with that came out 20 years ago with God, her name escapes me right now. But I'm watching that and then realizing, kind of coming back full circle to all of these stories, is that, well, there's Clueless. Clueless
I know,
is
that's what I was gonna say. And then the Emma from 25 years ago, the Clueless.
it's so that's where I'm kind of I agree that there are not that many stories. It's a different premise, but it's the same idea. We're talking love, we're talking fear, we're talking overcoming obstacles, growth. It's all the same, but that's why some things, there can be 1,500 books on love or self-love or discovery, but it's which resonates with whoever is reading it, because one is going to resonate with you and the other is going to resonate with somebody else. So people keep writing, people keep doing movies. It's all great. Doesn't matter. It's the same story.
Well, and I think what you're hitting on too is that should be celebrated, where a lot of people are like, oh, it's that same old story. And it's like, well, it's the story, the human story that people want to hear. And someone, because, by nature of them telling it, it's going to be a different voice and a different perspective and a different person in the audience who's going to see themselves on screen. And so I think we should be celebrating that we tell the same stories over and over again. Like, I don't think we need to be doing a million sequels of, superhero movies necessarily, but it's okay to think, what if we took that but told it this way or from this person's point of view? Because there are still plenty of voices in our world that are underrepresented and we're not hearing from, and they should get to tell those stories. That's going to be a whole different story if it's told from those viewpoints.
Agreed. But again, in our industry, it's a business like any other. So if there is a formula that works, they're going to continue with that formula, especially in something that costs a lot of money to make. That's why I love indies. I love indies because they really get a chance to play. And now that the technology is there, indies can, be at not the same level because there's just not enough money or time for it, but they can be at a really high level and they have a chance to tell those stories from different perspectives. So I'm a big indie fan.
Yeah. And I like the commercial stuff too, I'm equal opportunity. Like it's the time of year for Christmas movies. And I'm like, I like knowing what I'm going to turn on. I like that I know where it's going to go. Like, that's why I'm there. I'm there because the world is crazy right now. And I want to know, like, they're going to tie up all those loose ends for me and I'm going to feel good at the end. It's knowing what you need when you need it.
I know it's that whole Hallmark channel. It's like my favorite time of the year is this time. It's right before Thanksgiving, going through the New Year's, because that's my energy, that's my music, that's the kind of the good feelings. I even noticed that I had a breakthrough where it just dawned on me. My wife asked me to wash dishes. I'm washing dishes, and I turn on Pandora, where I have kind of this eclectic mix, and then I'm enjoying washing dishes. And I ask myself the question of, why are you enjoying washing dishes? It's not necessarily something that I would think that I would be enjoying, but it's because I am listening to the music, which a lot of it is in those movies that you and I are loving in the Christmas time. And it reminds me and it creates that atmosphere where I'm just happy and it's joyful. And I can wash dishes for 2 hours. I don't care. It's a great feeling. So
Maybe
I
I
told them,
my kids put some music on, be like, clean your room. It's fun now. Let's see if it works.
yeah. So we get a chance to trick ourselves into it, but it's because of that music, because of those movies. I love them as well. When people are asking, like, what do you want for your acting career? One of my big dreams is Hallmark movie. I want to be in that energy. To me, it's all about kind of energy. I can appreciate how wonderful some horror films are, and I'm not going to watch them because that's not my energy. But Hallmark movies, that's my energy. So
Well,
that's
this is the first year where we dived in deep to Hallmark movies. My husband and I starred in one together, and our sons were in it too, and everything. And we went in deep into that world. And now I've written two, and I have a publishing deal to come out with novel versions in 2021, a fall romance and a Christmas romance. I'm actually about to turn in the first draft for the fall romance in like a couple weeks, and I'm so excited. And so I'm like living in that headspace all day long, and I love it. I it started as a thing I was curious about, and now I'm like in so deep. This time last year, I think I'd seen Hallmark movies that my friends were in, but I'd never just watched them for fun. And now people are like mentioning Christmas movies, and like, oh, I've seen that one. Oh, that was a 2019 one. Yep, seen them all. So I get it. I feel you 100%, especially this year.
I
It's
know.
it's also a really growing medium, whereas stuff
Right.
is getting fragmented. People want more and more and more of it. And it's a loyal audience. And so I like tapping into that. I also, I've done all kinds of different work. I've had very eclectic jobs.
Yeah.
But it's nice to do something where I know like my kid could watch it, my grandma could watch it, anybody can watch it, and it's going to be appropriate and enjoyable. And that's a nice world too. I love doing fun, edgy stuff too, but sometimes that's hard to shake off when you come home. You always feel good when you come home from a Hallmark movie.
Thank you. And you're doing great, by the way, in transitions, because the next thing I wanted to ask you about is when you're doing something edgy, when you're doing that character that's different from you, that is in a different energy, how do you get back to you? Many people use, different ways of doing that. I want to know what yours is.
Well, I don't usually have a hard time shaking it off. Although I will, if I'm working on something that's like edgier or dark, a lot of times I like to go to sleep, like running lines, because I have a hard time falling asleep at night, and that tends to be a way that helps me fall asleep. But I sort of have a rule that if it's something edgy or dark, I need to read some other fiction or flip through a magazine or something before I go to bed.
Yeah.
But for me, it's usually the shaking off my regular life. My life's pretty great. I got a great family. I'm fairly happy most of the time.
Yeah.
But I always want to make sure that when the person who identifies with the person I'm playing in the audience like sees themselves portrayed on screen, that I'm doing them justice. And that means commit. I've got clients and friends, and he'll be like, oh no, I never go there. I don't ever go there. And I'm like, well, then don't play that role. Pass on it, because that's not, you're sure, protect your emotional health, but that's disrespectful if you're going to phone it in to the person who is looking up to see themselves represented on the screen. And so, but anyway, when I do all my work and everything, like let's say I'm going into an audition that's edgy, if I really feel like it's far from me, I'm going to want to kind of inhabit that physical space when I leave my house. And that's the times when I will listen to the Pandora channel that I feel like represents that character, and I'm sort of in it there. But normally it sounds kind of silly, but if I'm outside an audition, we're always finding street parking a million miles away in LA. I'll like be at the meter, and I'll see where the building is, and I'll pick a line on the sidewalk, and I'll sort of like breathe in and count down. And I'm like, after I pass that line, I'm leaving me behind, and I'm like going into it, and I kind of like slip into it. So I'd give myself like the second where I do, and I'm like, okay. And then I'm like in that space. Now, sometimes I'll get into the audition and I'll see that there are 10 people on the waiting list, and I don't want to burn myself out. That seems to be a very dangerous thing. A lot of my clients will do. You don't need to be in that space for that long before an audition,
Yeah.
especially when you don't know when they're going to call you. So then I'll see, okay, this person's name is 2 before me. I'm going to go be myself, chill out, scroll Facebook until then. When I hear that name, we're going to repeat the process, and I'm going to get into that space again.
That's cool. I like that a lot. Yeah, I'm like some of your clients who, I don't go there. I've been offered some roles in really, really dark things, like you're a cult leader and you're gonna slice somebody's, throat because it's a part of the procedure. I'm like, nope, that's not an energy I want to be associated with. I know it's not something I'm going to have an easy time shaking off. And I'm an empath, so I pick up energy everywhere anyway. I don't want to pick up that energy and then have all sorts of sage and everything else that I'll need to do just to get rid of it. So yeah,
Well,
I pass
that's
it off.
really just taking charge of your career and what you want to do. I think it becomes a problem when it's the people who feel they have a right to do that without a right to committing to it what it deserves, and so they'll phone it in. And they'll proudly phone it in because they'll say like, oh yeah, I don't go there. And you can find a different way in, but if they're just not willing to go to that depth for it, especially if it's a client of mine, I'll say like, I don't know if I can help you on this because you're hiring me to try to help you play this person as close to the chest and honestly as possible, and you aren't willing to be honest in it. So that's different. It's nice. It's a sign of a professional to know when it's time to pass it on to someone else. So that I think is a great thing.
Good. All right. I feel good about it.
You're
Thank you. You're a
welcome.
wonderful acting coach. Even without hiring you, I already see why people do. Okay. Let's circle back a little bit because I in doing my prep on you, I saw a couple of really cool things that for me personally were interesting. You were born in Cinci. I'm in Chicago, but my friends and I, except for this year, for obvious reasons, my friends and I go to Cincinnati every year. It's like a boys tennis trip where we go and we watch the Western Southern Open, and we've spent 3-4 days there, just basically 12 hours of tennis a day, and we can't get enough of it. So I missed that part of it. So I saw that you're from Cincinnati, and then your dad played tennis professionally. But then actually, by the way, before we even get there, I started looking. I'm like, well, I don't see her dad's name, so I put Steinman tennis, and then I see Robert Steinman, who's who played at Stanford, and he graduated from New Trier, which is high school 20 minutes away. But timing does not add up. So it could be somebody that is a relative of yours that also is a tennis player. But tell me about your dad. Where did he play? How much did he play? I am not familiar.
Well, my dad was one of 9 children, and so as he told it, tennis, like he walked himself down to a tennis court when he was, 9 or 10 years old and just started playing. But he did very well. It didn't end up being what he pursued long term professionally.
Mhm.
But he played on his high school team, and they were big for tennis at St. X Xavier in Cincinnati. He went on to play at Princeton University, and then played professionally. He was ranked at some, I don't know. The thing is I grew up on tennis court every week of my life, and it wasn't called the Western. When I was growing up, it was the HB. And around the HB, I enjoyed it. What was nice is that my parents both really just gave me the freedom to pursue what I was interested in, and now
Yeah.
I have regrets that. I mean, I literally sat on a tennis court every day. It
Mhm.
didn't matter, and it's like I could wander off and do my own thing.
Yeah.
But my dad would have welcomed my interest, and I wasn't interested until high school, and then I started to play, and they didn't have a girls team at my high school, and so my dad volunteered to coach it. And so we had one. And so that's how I got my first varsity letter. I don't know that I would have had there already been a team, but
Yeah.
it was like the Mighty Ducks. We got together everybody who was interested. And, I remember me and Katie, we played some good doubles for then. But it was nice. And I liked growing up around that. And I knew all the tennis players,
Yeah.
and that's what was on. We didn't have cable. That's what was on in our house all the time.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's funny because a lot of my happy memories from my childhood are based around tennis, and I usually wasn't playing it.
And again, the awesome thing about going to Cincy for that tournament is the fact that tennis players, the best tennis players in the world, are there, and they are literally around Cincinnati. There is a sushi place that we go to and eat every time when we're there, and every time there is a tennis player there. And just sitting right next to us, so we're having a chat with a pro that we were just watching. It's Cincy is a place where I kind of noticed Dominic Thiem, and we talked to his coach before anybody really knew Dominic Thiem. So I was kind of I was in team before I know anybody else was on. So like all of these memories, and then going to practice because we obviously watching so much tennis, we need to go play, and you can play outdoors as well, but we go to the tennis clubs around, and there's always somebody practicing there. So you get a chance to practice. This my tennis, my kind of the achievement of my tennis career, which is not a career at all, but Pierre Pierre Herbert, I think he has three names. Pierre Herbert. He was number one doubles ranked player, and now he's doing fairly well in singles. He's, I think, 40 or 50 ranked. So he was on court one. We were on court two. We were they were practicing. We were playing doubles, and it's my turn to serve. And I'm about to serve, and I see all of them. They're taking a break and they're looking at me serving. And these are pros. And there's that thing that comes up like, well, I better not screw this up. I need to do something. So I have a serve that I learned by watching Pete Sampras, because I grew up with Pete. He was my favorite player. And I hit it, and this is a serve out wide. I hit the serve. I don't know how fast it goes. I used to serve fairly fast. When I was growing up, I thought I was going to be a pro because I could serve over 120 miles an hour. So it was a good serve. It was a great serve, right kind of out wide, and it, because of the spin, you're not spinning this way, you're spinning this way. So it bounces this way, and all of them were like, "Whoa, that's a great serve." I'm like, "Yes, that's it. That's my tennis moment. I've arrived." And then when they were leaving, they said, "Hey, dude, that was a great serve." I'm like, "I'm good."
Well, yeah. And I probably did that at that club too, I would bet, because my dad was also, there were years where he was a resident pro at all the different clubs in Cincinnati. Yeah. So for me, I knew how you could like sneak behind everything, where all the like secret passages were. Like that was more my frame of it. But yeah, it was cool. There were always people that I would know from TV there. I always got, even though I wasn't a huge tennis fan, I was in the same way that somebody is watching a professional sports team who doesn't really play it, because that was a sport in our house. And so I'd always get all the autographs after the matches, and I always thought that was really cool. It was really cool.
It's a great tournament. We sincerely sincerely hope that things calm down enough by August where we can go and have that tournament again. We missed it this year. Anyway, so back to you. So you grew up in Cinci, well, kind of. Then you went across the bridge to northern Kentucky.
Yeah, there's a big in there. So I'm like, anybody who's watching would be like, "No, she's from northern Kentucky," which people who aren't from that area don't really understand. Actually, people who aren't from that area have no idea that Kentucky and Ohio border each other. I've learned that over the years.
Yeah, it's a bridge, people. Yeah.
I literally grew up 3 blocks from the Ohio River, so it's close, and that's where Cincinnati starts. But there people call it the Ohio Ocean, because culturally it's so different. The Ohio people and the Kentucky people, and my dad was born and raised in Cincinnati. My mom was born and raised in northern Kentucky, and it was like 2 different worlds. And so I was born in Cincinnati, but lived in northern Kentucky from age 3 until I moved, and then that's where I went to college too, was in northern Kentucky.
I got you. I didn't know that it was at 3. Okay, that makes a little more sense. But yeah.
All my relatives in Cincinnati, and unlike a lot of people, like people will drive in northern Kentucky 30 miles south to go to a store that is 3 miles north in Ohio. Like it's a strange thing. I don't know. I mean, it could be that used to be the old line between the north and the south. I have theories that like those lines run deep, that was literally the line. Whatever it was, my family never really adhered to that. So, my dance classes were in Cincinnati. Our friends were in Cincinnati. Like we spent tons of time in Cincinnati. My parents usually worked there. My mom was always a nurse and worked at the hospitals there. But yeah, there's a line there. It's funny. And I know there's other places like that in the United States where it's like, oh, it's not the same thing. And even in college, people will be like, oh, you're from Cincinnati. Oh, you're from Kentucky. And we could walk the distance between them, Funny.
A lot of my relatives are in Detroit. I spend a lot of time in Detroit. I went to high school my freshman year in Detroit. So you have Detroit and then Windsor, right across the bridge. So you have US and you have Canada, and you go back and forth, and it's just a bridge. That's really all it is. So
that was the big for us in college for the fraternity formal, since the drinking age in Windsor was 19.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted an invite to the dance in Windsor because they could go up and party. And it's just crazy to be like, and we're in Canada, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it's cool, but yeah, I love where you grew up because that area will always be special to me because of tennis, and I have family in Louisville as well, so we kind
Oh
of
yeah, I do too. I love Louisville. That's one of my other favorite cities back there. It's a great city.
very cool. All right, let's kind of build up into your acting career, right? So you grew up in Northern Kentucky. Everybody listening, it is Northern Kentucky. Up in Northern Kentucky, then you kind of you did a cool thing of you were a broadcasting journalism major because you didn't know whether acting was going to be it, or you listened to other people that said, well, if you could do something else, do something else.
Mhm.
We know that feeling, right? It's that thing. I think in the Marvelous Miss Maisel, they did that really, really well when she was asking in the very beginning, where she was asking if you could do something else, would you do it? He's like, nope. That's just you have to. It's either it's in your blood or it's not. And those of us who are in the industry, we know what that feels like. So
Sometimes it sometimes it feels like an affliction, but yeah, if you've been bitten, as a
yeah,
parent now, it's interesting to look at my kids. Like kid one is safe; he's got no interest in the business. Kid two has warning signs, and my husband's an actor too, and
yeah,
our older son's always like, "Mom, Dad, like get a real job," you know, and like, but the little one lately, we've been like, "Uh-oh, oh no, no," like it's a blessing and a curse, you know.
it is. And my daughter is into it. My son is not. Thankfully, my daughter is kind of on the edge. She loves She's 16, so she loves high school theater. She's a music theater kid. She loves all of that part. But I don't see her kind of, Dad, I need to audition. I need to get an agent. I need to do this. You need to drive me. I don't see it, and I'm not pushing. I'm okay. I'm okay
Well,
with it.
it's the only profession I think where we really encourage children to get jobs when they're little. It's like when a kid shows an interest or a talent in soccer, like we put them on a team and maybe they do select teams and they travel, but we're not trying to get them to go pro.
Right.
And I have many clients that are young kids, and it's been right for their family. But I know in my family, especially with two actors as parents, like my kids aren't getting jobs, whatever they are, until they're at least 16, and
Yeah.
then only like if they're driving it. They have their whole lives to do it. And I've been trying to encourage that with my 10-year-old lately, and just or he's like, well, I think I want to be this or that. And I'm like, things are different now. You can be five things. You could be a police officer and then a librarian and then a scuba diver. Like, you can choose all that. And he'll say these things, oh, I really want to do this, but that doesn't really pay much money. And I'm like, you can also have hobbies. Like,
Yeah.
sure, you could do that anyway because that brings you joy. But if you want to be in charge of the model trains at Travel Town or Train Museum, which is a volunteer club,
Yeah.
that's a hobby, bud. Like, I feel like almost there's so much pressure on, like, what will you do to make money? And that's such an American thing,
Yeah.
that should also bring you ultimate joy and satisfaction. It's a lot of pressure, even on a 10-year-old. And so I've said that, some people have jobs that give them a good life so that in their free time they can pursue whatever they want. Other people know, even if they don't make a ton of money at it, it's important to them to be working every day at the thing that fulfills them. Not one is not right, one is not wrong, but
Yeah.
one is right for you.
It's a really tough thing, and growing up knowing that I wanted to do something only when it's fulfilling to me has been very frustrating. And there's a lot of upstarts, and I was really successful in an IT consulting world, and I dropped out of it because I didn't feel fulfilled, and it doesn't matter how much money I was making, and it caused my wife a whole lot of grief. And my wife is the opposite of all things acting. It's go get an education, get a job, continue growing. This is a job. You want to have hobbies, but very risk averse. Whereas I am all about what is fulfillment, what is my drive, what is my passion, how do I make my passion into a daily thing that I can actually get paid for. And that's been 20 years of just
Word artist.
Yeah, and I'm still finding the balance, and I'm not sure that I found it, but I think with this show that I've started during COVID times, with the show, with the some of the acting opportunities that I have, and with a regular job in IT or HR, I do kind of both things that satisfies all. And if the show becomes something that replaces the income, then I'll gladly drop out of the other one. But I'm not going to make that thing of I'll only do the show and then hope it works out because it's fulfilling to me. You need to have money. I have two kids. I have responsibilities. It's a reality. So it's not an easy thing to be crazy like we are.
Well, and I noticed, I used to always think of having a second job as being like a backup plan. If things go badly, then you do that thing. And the longer I've been in this business, my most successful friends, to the friends that aren't sure if they're going to qualify for health insurance each year, in the union, they all choose something else, and not because it's a failure or a backup plan, but simply because if you are only an actor, you have very little power at any level that you're at. You feel obligated to take jobs you might not want to say yes, to beg for work. And so if it's on the other side, the writing and producing, I feel like a lot of times people get it in their minds like, oh, they couldn't make it as an actor, so they started producing, or this or that. But all of a sudden, if you have that other thing going on, you're in charge of your creative fulfillment. And sure, you can get that from class as well. I've always said it's super greedy to expect someone to pay you a ton of money and also offer you full artistic satisfaction. Like, it's just selfish. So I've always said, you don't have to pay me money to do both. I'll do commercials, which are fun, maybe not like using all of my skills, are going to pay me well. And then it's my job to get in class that night and be doing the thing where I'm leaving my heart on the floor on the stage. Anybody who can make any money in this business is in the 1% anyway. And so I think that's realistic. But my husband, I'm like your wife to my husband. Well, I don't want him to not act, but like he's just this charismatic, well-spoken, educated guy who's brilliant at like finance and charm, and people just offer him jobs. Like they're just like, if you ever stop acting, like come call. And I'm like, do you know how hard it is to get jobs? And some of those jobs would pay a lot of money. And it's like, I don't want him to leave, and he's really, I think, just now coming into his prime of his acting career, and he's so good. But like, it is hard sometimes. You have to remind yourself, okay, we've made this choice. We're not victims of our circumstances. We've chosen to live the life of an artist with its ups and downs, knowing that there could perhaps have been a more secure path for us. That's a choice. And so that gives you, I think that then you don't feel like a victim. You're like, no, I own this. I could always pursue something else, but my priority is artistic satisfaction, and I'm not done yet.
Yeah, everybody has something that they work on within a particular lifetime, and yes, I believe in multiple lifetimes. But and one of the things that I'm working on, and I know other people in the industry, they're working on, where is your fulfillment coming from? How do you combine artistic and creative endeavors with things that actually you get paid for and have stability? It's a never-ending thing. So I'm glad, going back to the kids, I want them to make their choices. But as my daughter is deciding on what college and what her major is going to be, I'm not paying for her to go to acting school. I'm so sorry to everybody who went to acting school, who believes in it. I love the idea of it, but I'm not paying for her to go to acting school. I'm paying for her to have a major, to have something that combines kind of her creative and artistic side with the business corporate world that'll give her stability and continue acting, continue taking classes, continue doing things if that's what you want, because a lot of the successful actors I know did not go to acting school. So acting school does not necessarily translate to an acting career. And the problem that I have with a lot of the acting schools is they don't really train you how to be a successful actor. They train you theater techniques, and they train you how to utilize your emotional and your emotional states, your body, everything. And it's theater, theater, theater. And then you come out and they didn't really even teach you what a mark is. forget about who an agent is and how do you actually audition. And when you get on set, what are the things that you need to understand? Because a set is a zoo. And do you remember that you actually have to, when you get in on an overnight shoot at 3 in the morning, when they finally set up the shot, do you think you're going to be able to drop into your character when everybody's yelling around you? It's like the things of what reality of an acting life is. I haven't talked to anybody that has gone through acting school that actually says that they teach them that. It's more of like, we prepare you and then go free. Well, a lot
Well,
of people drop out because they can't get a job.
there's a lot of different ways to get to the same place. And,
Yeah.
even though I came from a family of lifelong learners, and my dad, I mean, they just went to school forever. Like it was like professional students in many ways. But even with that, even with my dad being an Ivy Leaguer and, having advanced degrees and stuff, the message was always you have to do well there and you need to graduate for it to matter. But how you spend your time when you're there won't matter to many people except for you. And I felt a lot of pressure. I had a scholarship for elementary education and I was like, I don't know if I want to be a teacher yet. Like I don't know. And my mom was like, just go to college and take what's fun. And you'll be more successful that way and you don't know what you'll find. And so I never intended to believe that I needed to study the thing that I would use. And that freed me because at
Mhm.
that age, I was barely 17 when I started college and like I didn't even know at 25 what the heck I wanted to do with my life. And
Yeah.
so I took archaeology and tap and acting and history of the gold rush and Jane Austen and all these things. And so I did very well in college. And it took me 5 years to graduate with great grades, wonderful experience. And I had so many life experiences,
Mhm.
business skills from the organizations I joined and all of that that I don't think I would have gotten if I would have been there like with a plan. And I think the only time that an acting school inhibits a person is when they teach them that that's all they need. And sometimes some of my students who come to me will be recent graduates who are very adamant, like, oh, I paid all this money for this degree and I have that. So no, I'm not going to go take this improv class. I shouldn't have to get a referral for these agents. I'm going to do it on my own. And anytime I think anything, and I doubt that's the message the schools are intending to send, because I have many students who graduated from Tisch and all these great programs that are doing great. But anytime it's encouraging the ego, you know, people can call it a nepotism business, but it's not. But it's a collaborative business, and it's all about referrals and community. And if people come in with that solo lone wolf attitude, they're going to have a lot harder of a climb than
Mhm.
someone who is there to build networks. And so I think that's the dangerous thing is coming in feeling that you're owed something because of where you've trained. I was the opposite. I was very self-conscious about my lack of that. And so I think in some ways that helped me because I felt like I had more to prove by studying as fast as I could and training and reading everything I could because I was insecure about that.
So was Russell Crowe, and he did okay. Yeah.
I feel like there's a lesson there.
Yeah, I think so. Again, oh, when I talk to people and I tell them, what is there something that can be, taken as a successful path within acting? It's building communities, it's networking. That's really what it is. And not networking as in you need to know the right people. No, it's be with the people who are enjoying and doing the same things that you are because naturally you'll want to help each other out. When you look at so many films, so many franchises. I mean, look at Adam Sandler, who I love. Look at who he works with. It's usually the same people.
Mhm.
When you look at Quentin Tarantino, it's usually the same people. When you're looking at a lot of the creatives, they kind of just come together and they work together because they enjoy. They know they're professionals. They know what works and what doesn't. That's how things are done. Just find your tribe, find your community, and be a part of it, and that usually has a higher chance of succeeding than which school did you go to.
Well, and when you just show up and pitch in and ask people for their advice, people throw you opportunities. When you go around asking people for things, that's never the case. And I think that's the biggest difference too, is like, if you just show people who you'll be in this business
Mhm.
and say yes and pitch in and ask them for knowledge, not handouts, they're going to hand you things because they're going to want to help you and because they feel like they're doing that on their own volition. And that's how a lot of things in my life have happened. I've done some random short film on a weekend that pays no money because a friend of mine's like, oh, please, somebody dropped out. And I know it would be helpful if they had you do it. And I'm like, I'm free on Saturday, sure. And then you never know. Like, did that film go to South by Southwest? No. But 5 years later, did that person decide that they wanted to be a casting director instead? And there's all these little threads that I don't know. And had I done that job for the expected outcome, I would have gotten nothing from it. But I didn't. I'm an actor. I showed up and I acted. And whether you're paying me $5,000 a day or deferred pay, I'm going to show you who I am as a professional, and that has benefited me. And to people who are like, well, that's because you're nice, because no, I'm also smart. Like, even
Yes.
people who are mean and selfish, I'm like, at least be respectful on set for your own sake, because people aren't going to hire you again. They're not going to want to work with you. I see it all the time. I'm a repeat actor. People hire me again. I
Yeah.
show up. I'm good at what I do. I'm grateful for the opportunity. You never have to worry about me. You can set me and forget me. And I see the actors that filter out because they come and they don't realize that getting the job is not how you keep the job. You get the job and then you still have to prove yourself as a professional, and people want to like being around you. That's what they always say about Keanu Reeves. Everybody just loves being around him. And that's why he's had his career, is because everybody just wants to be around the guy. It's like, I want to be like that. That sounds cool.
I learned that, and this is where, again, I completely agree with you. And I think all of the experiences that I've had in my life, plus, who I am as a person, that really helped me with acting, because I started acting, late. I started acting at, 40 something. Really, I've always been in it, but I've never really kind of pushed it until I was early 40s. And I remember I was hired in a tiny role in a student film, well, student slash indie, to play a homeless man, and I in northwest suburbs of Chicago. So the shoot is in Chicago. It was an overnight shoot. Like, I put my kids to bed and I get in my car and I drive, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing? And I get there, I go, and the director comes up and says, listen, I don't know how to tell you this, but my filming crew just walked out. They're not going to do any more overnight, so they just walked out. So we can, film. I apologize. I'm like, hey, it happens. No worries, no problem. So I drive back home. I get to sleep. Like, few months later, he calls me up saying, hey, I am doing a film this weekend. I have a lead kind of a role for you. Do you want it? Yes. So I do that one. And he calls and he says, all right, so we're back to shooting this movie. I decided to restructure it. Are you okay playing the lead? I'm going to rewrite it for you. Yes. So that second one then became a third. Then he called me in for the fourth. Now he's putting stuff together. I became a producer on one of his films. Now one of his friends who was on the first movie that we did together, second, he asked me to help him produce another film that now is in LA. Like, that tiny little no pay opportunity and me being a good guy about something bad that happened led to half my resume.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to recognize those lessons, because sometimes people be like, look at this cool thing that happened, and they don't realize the universe is like saying, hey, like, wake up. This is how we work. Like, this is what we're doing. This is, if you are looking for answers, this is your answer. So continue to behave that way.
Perfect. I need to mention a few of the projects that you were on. I did mention Glee at the very beginning. I'm a Gleek. My daughter is a Gleek. We love Glee. And you had a really fun role with Artie. I
Yeah.
I did remember it. Obviously watching it, you kind of remember those lines, and then watching it again, I'm like, yeah, I remember that. I remember Artie making films, and it was great. But my wife's favorite show by far is This Is Us. And you had a chance to do an episode of This Is Us. So
Mhm.
I know she saw you, and I'm sure that she's gonna really enjoy watching this. But for her sake, what was the experience like on that set? Because it's a fantastic show.
It was it was a truly great experience. Telsey and Company, the casting agency, is just a very open. So even from the audition on, just warm, open, positive. This was back when you could still audition in person, back in the olden days.
Yep.
And I had auditioned for the show before and was kind of bummed when I didn't get a role. And then this role came along, and it was actually a better and more interesting and more fun role. And so it's nice, it's a good reminder too to be like, let things go because you never know like what's coming. And everybody on that set was so great, and most of my scenes were with Justin Hartley, and he was super sweet, and also became a parent very young in this town, and so we connected over that, had lots of conversations about that. um, and so it was a truly great experience. And then professionally, it was nice because, a lot of times in auditions, you're explaining to people what you've been up to. They're looking at your resume. Oh, you're on this. Yeah, I've heard about that. And you're like, yeah, it's this. And for like a few weeks after that, when I would go into auditions, they'd be like, okay, just before we do anything, I saw you on This Is Us. And I was like, well, this is great. I don't even have to sell myself today.
Yes.
And so that it was fun to be a part of such an iconic show. And one of my good friends is on the show more regularly, and so it was kind of fun to be like, I'm gonna be on the show, and tell her all about that. And she still is. And so actually that's when I started watching the show. And I don't catch it every week with my kids being home 24/7. I'm
Yeah.
like, I binge every couple months and like catch up on things, and the rest of the time I'm only watching children's TV mostly. But
And
I became a big fan of that show, and that style of storytelling, I think, really inspires me as a writer too. Because so often, especially in TV, people, if they focus on character development, it's like one or two characters, and man, like every little character is so fleshed out, which shows you that the people who are writing it, and obviously every episode could be different. I know Dan Fogelman created it, but shows that they like writing, because you don't have to do that. You can tell a story without, but it's an actor's dream to be like, oh wow, like there's actually a whole character here,
yeah,
Um, so I had a lot of fun on that one.
that's very cool. And then one of my favorite comedies is Community, and you had a chance to be on that as well.
No, I didn't.
You didn't? It shows it on IMDb
Put
Pro.
that on IMDb, and I submitted something one time saying it was wrong, and they left it there. I would have
Wow.
liked Community. I was never on Community.
I
Fun
was
fact.
So like all things, I get to it much later. So I started watching Community recently, and I just got to season 3. And doing my prep, I saw that it shows for you season 3, woman with a baby. I'm like, hey, that's cool. I'm about to watch Galadriel.
Don't
And
look too hard. It's a good lesson not to believe everything you read on the internet, I guess.
I was talking to an actor who on IMDb Pro, it shows that he was a part of Glee, and it shows one of the parts. I'm like, I don't remember him at all. And in talking to him, he said, "Yeah, somebody put me in there. I was never on Glee. I talked to IMDb. They never took it off. So now you're the second person that I hear this from."
Well, I was on Glee. That was real. That
Well,
was
right,
a
that part I know. But it's okay. So you were not on Community. I'm sorry about that.
It's fine
Yeah,
with me. I mean, I would take the residuals, but otherwise, I don't think I even ever auditioned for that show, so I've lost nothing.
gotcha. And then a lot of people know you from The Middle.
Mhm.
I have not watched The Middle. I've seen the commercials. I know what the show is about, and a lot of actors that I really like are on that show. But I haven't gotten there yet. No, maybe I will watch it with my kids because I think they may enjoy it. But
I think
um,
they 10-year-old really likes it a lot.
yeah, how did that opportunity come about? Because that's where you've done most episodes of any shows that you're on.
Yeah, that was a great, very windy road. It started years ago. I took an acting class with G. Charles Wright, who cast The Middle,
Mhm.
and began a working relationship with him. He's a great guy, and he's a really good teacher, and he started as an actor himself. And actually, I learned so many because, as we talked about, the translation between being able to audition well versus just knowing how to act. And
Right.
he was really good at teaching act. Well, still is really good. I just haven't taken the class in a long
Yeah.
time. Really good at teaching actors how to audition. But at first, I wasn't good at comedy, and so I was just a student. I would go do things and come back. And he was always a big champion of my career. But also one of the not few casting directors, but not all casting directors do understand that good actors will continue to be better every time you see them because they're going to be training and learning new things. They're not just going to say, oh no, I saw them 2 years ago for comedy. They don't do comedy. They know, like, oh, I should see them. It's been a while. They're like not doing new things. And so he encouraged me to study comedy more seriously, and I did. And then he bring me in for small roles, you know, it was very where I was in my career. And then I remember he brought me in for a role at one point, and I had auditioned for the middle so many times, and had some roles I really wanted to. And there was this one point in which I went in for an audition, and he was like, you know, I don't feel like this is a great fit for you, but I know there's a role coming up that I just think you'd be really great for. And it's a bigger role. I know they kind of want a name for it, but like I just saw you and I thought of it. And so just be ready for that, you know. And that ended up being the role that I booked, and I had to fight for it. The producers, I think, really did want someone at the time maybe that was more well known than I was, and I think they were kind of taking a chance on me, especially at that point in my career.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful, and one of the creators of the show is from Cincinnati as well, and there was a big flavor of that in the show, and we connected. And you know, it's supposed to only be a couple episodes, at least so they said at the
Yeah.
beginning, and they said they were just enjoying having me around, and I was very happy to be there.
Yeah.
And so it was wonderful, and it was a good example of, you know, I didn't start studying with him to try to get a job on his show, and in fact, I wasn't anywhere near ready for that. But now in the other way too, I look for opportunities where I'd like to help him. If anybody's ever looking for a great casting director for a project, I'd be like, I know the guy. And so it's a mutual admiration that
Yeah.
I think everybody, like I've got a whole web of people that I'm always looking out for that are always looking out for me. And so sure, my agents probably submitted me for that part,
Yeah.
but it was because of a relationship I had already built. And so that's something that I really try to encourage with my students, particularly the ones who see me for career consultations, is that your agents and managers get 10%,
Yeah.
90% or 80%, depending on how many reps you have, is on you. And if you're not putting things out there, they can't sell nothing. And so they'll be like, oh, I think I need to get a new agent. I'm not getting out at all. And you know, it's like, yes, they should be doing their job to some degree, but what are you doing to meet people, to get your face out there, to be working, to making things?
Yeah.
And so I found that, you know, they always say musicians practice every day, professional athletes would never dream of not staying fit every day, but actors somehow think they only need to act on days when they get auditions and they still should get parts, you know? So I feel like that's a thing that has really helped me at least continue to make a living in this business.
No, that's great. I'm really happy about that experience because I do a lot of workshops. Anytime a casting director, you know, before in the good old days, anytime a casting director would come to Chicago, I would, you know, take a workshop with them in person. And then I started doing things virtually, not because of, hey, I need them to see me because something can come out of it, but you want to learn, you want to see what people are like. And I've met some wonderful casting directors, some of which I had on my show, you know, after that because they were really influential in my growth as an actor. And
Mhm.
then anything else that happens is a bonus. That's not the
Yeah,
reason. Yeah.
exactly. That's what I say. And I know some people don't agree with doing workshops, and there was the pay for play scandal, and those have never been the workshops I've been interested in. But I've
Mhm.
gotten some really enlightening feedback on my own stuff from casting directors who I know, who in their job capacity, it's not their job to sit there in the audition and tell me these things about myself, but in a learning environment, it's great. And also just to see how they work with other actors and things. And yes, sometimes it turns into a long relationship and you end up working together, but you know, I always at least get that out of it. And so I love being surprised when those things come out of it because I come to act, to audition, and to get feedback and to grow and learn. And now is a really great time for actors to do that when things are slow. You know, it's you're in your house. It's going to be hard to meet new people right now. It's going to be hard to network right now. And sure, I wish there was a world in which, you know, I didn't pay and do this and do that. But and there are definitely casting directors who took advantage of that and were just profiting,
Yeah.
um, that was a shame. But the ones that are still there, at least the ones that I've experienced with at the legit places, They're there because they're like, oh, I just wish actors knew this. I wish actors would
Thank you.
just know this when they come into audition. And I'm like, over here, like, I'll listen. And I've even, I did one at one point with Kendra Castleberry, and it was all about procedurals. And she had all these gems that were so specific to procedurals that I just wrote out. And afterwards, I was like, I teach an acting class. Like, I'll totally credit you, but is it cool if I just like verbatim, like tell my students? She was like, you don't need to credit me. Like, I didn't come up with it. I'm like, it's not common knowledge, even
Yeah.
among people. I've been in tons of procedurals, and so I'm totally all about that. And so I'm always like, this is Kendra Castleberry's rules for procedurals.
Good, good. No, it's absolutely right. And the man who inspired me to kind of start this show was a workshop that I had with John Levy, who's a
Yeah.
director of The West Wing, which is my favorite show ever, and ER, and many other shows. And I just I wrote about 4 pages of notes and just listening to him talk in that workshop, and I said I need to share and I need to have the show so I can invite people on so we can all learn. And that was the impetus for this show. So
Wow.
casting director John Levy was the reason. I invited him on the show. He's really busy. I'm sure one day he's going to come onto my show and we can talk about it. And speaking of workshops and classes, I know you have a master class that's coming up. Tell people more about it. I think I want to do it myself. So.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that. I've been working on it for a long time. It was actually an idea I've had for a long time, mostly because I've been an acting teacher independently and at one of the top LA acting studios, the Michael Wilson Studio, since 2013. And around that time, also, I started traveling and doing all-day intensives for actors around the country. And then also would do one-day classes for actors who were on trips to LA. Then though, the challenge would say, they'd go, oh my gosh, I got all this different insight than the types of things they're teaching at playhouses, which is a great place to start too. And they're like, so then now where do I go? Or what do I do when I get home? And it was hard because many of them became private coaching clients of mine. We would do general stuff where I'd assign them one-on-one until they started getting auditions. But that's costly. And some people want to just do the class, like be in it, and it's just not available to everybody. Internet connection, time of day, whatever. And so for years, I found that frustrating. And some would move here and then they join my class. And, I have several classes and private coaching, and I have clients all over the world. But I've sort of developed all these specific exercises for parts of the technique, because as a student, the part that was really frustrating to me was I would study all these places and like philosophically I'd be like, yeah, that's great. And then I'd be like, so how do I know if I'm doing that? Like, what does it feel like? Or like, is there like a step I do to like try that objective, or to how do I tangibly raise the stakes, and and those sorts of things. And so I started developing exercises for like each part of it. And so Sam Finley, who I worked on a film with last year, he approached me and was like, I just had this idea. What if we did an actual like masterclass style class? And I love masterclass, but it's more like fun, inspiring TED Talks. It's not so much like busting out the work as you go. And that's what I felt like students needed. And so we worked on it 4 months and filmed like hours of this. I wrote all original scenes. Each scene is an opportunity to practice a different part of the technique. And then we come back together and we go over together and I say like what I would have done. And it's top to bottom, nuts and bolts, every part of every technique, that foundation that I found helpful. And then the twists that I have found by taking them my own way. Like, for example, adding in things like specifically in your checklist of technique thoughts, and specific ways for blocking and auditions and things like that. And so we just finished our first round of beta testers and the feedback was great. Actors found it super helpful and felt like they could use it right away. And so next week, Acting with Gala is launching. And so I'll be sending you a code that you can offer to your viewers so that they can get a discount. Yeah, and it's I think it's a great opening thing. So now I used to always say like, oh, do what you can and Chicago or Cincinnati or whatever before you move to LA. It really is getting to the point where you don't have to move now,
Mhm.
but the training hasn't gotten as specific there. And the style always changes, for auditions, at the size and things. And so, yes, actors in, Des Moines can audition for the same roles that I can now in Los Angeles, but in order to be competitive, there are things that they may not have access to there. And so that's what this is. You could take one long weekend, and by
Mhm.
the time you're finished, feel like I pretty much know top to bottom acting technique. And yeah, maybe I'm going to go back and like go over it some more. And all of it is, each exercise you could directly apply into other sides, adding in one step with each lesson until the end when you have it all, and then you throw it all away. So I'm really, as you can tell, I'm really excited about it. It was a baby of mine for a long time. And it's basically what I have spent years creating in the classroom and
Mhm.
with my students privately, to see what works, what resonates with the 10-year-old newbie actor and the 60-year-old Tony-winning actor that's trying to begin a film and a career in TV and film. And I think these universal things are good for every part of that spectrum, and just helping you find more specificity in your work.
That's very cool. Yeah, please send the code and please send the link so we can put it right below the video. Guys, go check it out.
I
Uh,
definitely, I'll talk to the director today and get you all the info.
Perfect. I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a joy talking to you. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was great. I really enjoyed myself.
Thank you. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. Go follow, go take a look at the masterclass. Hopefully it is for you as well. And let's kick off December on a good note. Let's all stay healthy. Let's be smart. Let's finish off this 2020 strong and get ready for 2021, which hopefully is a lot better than 2020. Take care, everybody. Bye.